Priya, lovely to have you here to talk about Neel Bagh and our work and life over there. Can we start from the beginning and say that how you joined Neel Bagh and how you came to be there?
I was fortunate to be able to join the Neel Bagh teacher training course 2 years because my father thought I was cut out to be a teacher ever since I was a child, and he had plans for me to go to Church Park in then Madras for a 2-year training course. But before that, I happened to attend a talk of David Horsburgh talking about Neel Bagh in Bangalore and the plan he had to start this 2-year teacher training course. I was so impressed with David, just what I heard, and I thought, this is amazing. It's in another kind of world, going out into a rural area. So I came back and told my father, I want to go to Neel Bagh. And he was totally upset and shocked and said, oh no, because if you go there, where's your teacher's certificate? You won't get anything because you're training in a rural area. What qualifications will you have? And he totally rejected the idea. So it was a very difficult start for me, but I pursued and I said, I'm going. And he said, you're on your own. And I made my journey and I went. And never regretted doing that at all.
And when you reached Neel Bagh, what were your first impressions about the place and the people?
Quite amazing, because I come from a city, Bangalore. I'm a city girl. I was a city girl then. And we were met off the bus stop in Rayalpad with one of David's members of staff and a bullock cart. And I thought, gosh, are we really going to get on that? I'd never been on a bullock cart in my life with these other trainees who I didn't know. And there we were on this bumpy journey, but I was fascinated looking around the hills, the atmosphere, the landscapes. And there I saw David and Doreen waiting to greet us. And I thought, wow, what have I come into? Came off the bullock cart, and David introduced himself, and Doreen, of course, as dignified as ever, standing there. And I thought, have I made the right decision? Am I going to really live here? So it was really a sort of a shock in a way, but in a nice shock, a nice way. And I thought, okay, let's see what awaits us.
There were 4 of you in the training program, and Usha also as a teacher from Neel Bagh, and part of the training program. Though you were a group, he also looked at you individually and looked at your own personal growth through different means, discussions, etc. Can you describe what he was doing and how that helped you?
What was really interesting is David got to soon know us and our different backgrounds and abilities. And there was a set of assignments that David gave us to read, analyze, and discuss at the weekend with each other. In the beginning, I thought, I have not had this kind of exposure, and I'm reading material, for example, like the educationist Dearden, the philosophy of education. And I really thought, can I really do this? Because I'm going to read this assignment, we're going to have questions, and I have to give answers to this. We wrote answers, we also wrote diaries. And I thought, can I do this? But in the first instance when we started, I was a bit hesitant. But then I think David gave us the opportunities to be able to give our answers, discuss, suggest without opinions. And I realized whatever I said was not going to be taken as, oh, what is she saying? Everybody's opinions were accepted, and I began to gain confidence that I could read a passage either from Montessori or Dearden and think, oh, I think this is what I'm getting at, or this is what I'm understanding. And I felt in the process over the days and weeks and years to be able to give answers without feeling, is it right or wrong? And in that sense, it was a growing period for me and a learning experience. And through those assignments, we learned about the different philosophies of education which we could adapt in our teaching, through the teaching we did also in the school. And that's why David's teaching philosophy and approach really helped us each as individuals to feel that some things we could understand better than others, but it didn't matter. And that was the start of my education and learning journey, to feel confident as a person that I could do this, I could stand in front of a class and give what I can, and at the same time learn from the children, which I don't think I've ever had in my life. I was always a student. I thought the teacher had the answer, and here it was a two-way process. That was a very key part of the education or philosophy of David's education in Neel Bagh.
Yeah. What were the kind of activities that you did in Neel Bagh, and what was your routine like on a daily basis?
So we were given a rough outline of the schedule we could follow, and in the first year we were mainly observing the teachers, Usha, David, Doreen and anyone else, just to get an idea of what the routine was for the children as well. But what I really liked is we all started together. So David, once the children had their duties of cleaning, getting the school and the surroundings ready, we all went, sat at the back while David introduced songs that had been taught by visitors or anyone who would like to teach songs from different countries. So we had a wide repertoire of songs that we learnt. It was really nice that everybody could sing and participate regardless of your singing level. And the songs we learnt really holds me good now in my music and when I play and when I do singing sessions, because they're so relevant to what we were doing then and the atmosphere related to different countries and styles of singing. And the other nice thing was, which I really didn't expect, that we were doing hands-on activities, pottery, carpentry, wonderful crafts that Doreen taught. And I don't see myself as an artist, so I thought, how am I going to do this? Because I didn't expect to be doing hands-on activities. In the beginning, I thought, carpentry, I've never held a fret saw in my life. But the more we did, the more I thought, I can do this. And that was a way of confidence building just through doing those activities. And also seeing the children do the activities and comparing me as an adult thinking I can't do this because it's not perfect, and being able to make mistakes and learn again. And pottery was wonderful. I've never had experience with clay. We had an old tire from a truck that was made into a pottery wheel, and being able to form the clay and feel the impressions, and really all part of sort of sensory experiences that I've never had. So that was special. And the other activities were us sitting together, discussing the day and writing diaries of what we did personally, which actually was a good way of seeing growth or seeing impressions and mistakes and thinking, oh, I did it like that, maybe I should do differently. And also analyzing our relationship with the children, who of course for some children we had different approaches, and there were all aspects of how you dealt with a child based on their background or their age and how they related to us. Sometimes I felt the children, knowing that we were teacher trainees, would try us, the way we spoke or the way we taught. And I thought that was great. So they had the courage to do that, because also learning lesson that you're not just a teacher in charge. You learn also from the children, and it's a two-way process. And that two-way process was really a lifelong journey for me, to have acceptance of everyone who's different, regardless of age, background, and in the environment where you are. So that was really fantastic. The most important thing was I became a more confident person. I came from a background where I didn't feel secure due to lots of personal circumstances. And being in Neel Bagh and being confronted with different people, being able to question and not to be afraid if you didn't know the answer. And that's what I learned also from the way David approached this education. And the skills to give people space, to be able to recognize different abilities. And that came across in yoga, where you taught children, some of whom were actually hyper or didn't have the patience to listen. And I must say, my experience in Neel Bagh made me realize, take each child for who they are, and don't assume that everybody can be at the same level or frame of mind. And also being able to listen when someone is telling you something or talking to you, and take on suggestions, and being able to say, I don't know the answer, let's try and find it out together. That was really a wonderful skill to have, and David gave us the space and the scope to get into that groove of understanding, learning and sharing. I didn't come with much knowledge, but I took a lot of knowledge back with me on various aspects of life as well. And also to be able to have the warmth when you see that you're dealing with a child, they may be scared because you are the teacher, to have that connection through warmth and the feeling that we are friends, and I'm not at a high level or as a teacher, but we are both equal in the way we relate, and we can be free, and the space of a safe space. And the other thing that actually helped me was getting, not just going like you would as a 9-to-5 training, but being able to see the children in their environments, in their communities, because they had other tasks of tending to the cattle or drawing water. And I loved wandering, so I would wander off to the villages nearby where the children came from, and I got to know the parents. And I must say, at the beginning I thought, oh, language is a problem, because I didn't speak any Telugu and I picked it up, or I mixed up Telugu and English. But they accepted me for who I am, even though I was so different, coming from a city. We laughed together, they laughed at me, I laughed with them. And in learning or getting to know the parents, it helped me understand the children, which actually in most trainings you don't, because you don't see the home environment of the children. And once you see that, it does help you understand why a child is the way they are. And what was lovely was most times when I came back from the school to the hostel, there was some staff, David's staff, who lived on the campus, on the Neel Bagh land, and they would invite me to their house and to taste their favorite dish. And I had a sort of bond with some of them, and also learn to understand how their children were because of the parents. And that was a wonderful experience, to have the feeling of community. And because of that, I was able to function when I joined ActionAid, when I went out to rural areas in South India. I was able to function with the communities and talk to the parents as well, even though I was only doing an education program. Yeah. And that was really a good stepping stone for me to go further with other work I did.
Priya, yeah, that was, skills for life in a sense that you talked about, And David also wrote a book, for children, a workbook, learning about life, learning about living.
Yes.
Yeah. So would you like to talk about those kind of skills also that we picked up on the way as we lived in Neel Bagh?
What was very interesting is, as you say, David wrote a book, Learning About Living, and that was such a practical kind of book to look at, because all aspects of doing and learning, for example, there was handwriting, and we ourselves did the practice of handwriting. The children could write beautifully and calligraphy, and I had to learn it. I had very bad handwriting, still do, but we made an effort to do that. Also, the workbooks that he wrote, so we could ourselves try out and then see, okay, this is how we can present it to the children. So by doing the exercises, we got a better understanding. Not that maths was my strongest point, but in doing that activity, I learned this is how you bring it out to the children. And that was also important. Also, we went on excursions, going out, looking at flowers, picking stems. And like for science, we went out and collected things and came back. So it was a very practical way of doing it, rather than just writing on the board, this is what this is. And also, we were doing it with the children. So even I was learning. We had the context, but I was learning about, oh yes, this is what this is, let's take it back and discuss. And sometimes the children, because they live there and they're every day moving around in that environment, which is completely new for me, would tell me things I didn't know about plants and stones and just the sand. And all those things made it a sort of nice, wholesome education with David's book, Learning About Living, and it came together. And that for me was very special, to have the practice of doing everything that we learnt about, we did, and then we discussed.
In Neel Bagh as such, we looked at children individually, and each one at their pace, learnt at their pace, learnt at their level, and nothing was made much of, of whether they were very good at something or not so good at some things. And I think in a way the trainees also were seen that way as individuals rather than a herd. Would you like to talk about that and discuss?
But what was so good is that David allowed each one to express themselves and their abilities, and he wrote on that, and he would sort of draw us out, especially when we had our discussions as teacher trainees of assignments that he gave us on philosophers' education material, where we had to read it, think about it, and come back with our answers. And in the beginning I thought, how can I do this? I've never had exposure to this kind of education. Do I have the right answer? But in the process of doing those assignments, I realized there is no right answer. It's what you feel and think for at that moment, and think for yourself. And by giving your answer and your views, you were able to get ideas from the other trainees and realize, okay, I've learned something from them. And I think we all brought our different abilities and ideas because we were so different. And that space that David gave us and the children is something quite unique in his education system, which I haven't experienced before. And it has held me good for all the teaching I've done through yoga, through the Anne Frank education programs, through working with visually impaired people and the homeless. And everything we learned there, learning about living, we could apply and take that idea and realize, try to continue with that way of teaching, because it does give everybody a safe space and people free to express their opinion without feeling that one knows everything and there's no two-way process. And the warmth that came with that was very special, because we had the ability to hug a child when they were upset, or even hug each other as trainees, which I've never experienced, to be able to share that it's okay to cry, it's okay to laugh, and we're there for you. And it was, for me, one big family, which I've never really experienced myself. So that was the most important learning lesson I learned by being in Neel Bagh. Yeah, it makes me emotional.
Yeah.
What is wonderful is that we've stayed to a certain extent in touch. And of course via you, Amu, who's been our link, our anchor to bring us all together. We had this reunion in 2004 when I was visiting India. And it was wonderful to see the children as adults with their families, the akkas having gone away and had their different lives, coming together, the warmth, the laughter, and the enjoyment we had, remembering Neel Bagh, remembering David, Doreen, the whole family, and the wonderful experience that he gave us to keep the spirit going. That's very special.